everyone, my name is Mikiko Bazeley, Staff Developer Advocate at MongoDB. I'm super excited to have Aram join us today to share his startup builder story with us. Aram?
Hi, I'm Aram, co-founder and CEO of Modelance.
Awesome. So before Modelance, you founded another company called CodeSignal. Can you tell us about those early days?
Sure, yeah, so it's been a long time ago, around 2013, 2014. And CodeSignal does skill assessments. It actually went through multiple stages. So we started as a fun coding platform for engineers where they would be just like solving tasks and finding bugs and see who is the fastest at it. And we've used MongoDB when building CodeSignal. So that was my first experience building applications with MongoDB. And then since then, that was part of my stack. So it just stuck.
That's awesome to hear. And I was so excited when I was learning more about your backstory to hear about CodeSignals, because I remember when it had first come out and it had made a ton of waves. What drew you to choose MongoDB as your database?
Yeah, to be honest, there wasn't a lot of science and research that went into it the first time. So I would say the very first time we used MongoDB, it was as part of Meteor, Meteor.js, that was a full stack JavaScript framework. And we used it because Meteor was based on MongoDB. And the biggest reason why we picked that tech stack was real-time data. So now it might not be the same, but back then, real-time data support in different frameworks wasn't as good, and there are not that many solutions where you could just have live data very easily. And Meteor was doing it with MongoDB's change streams and oplog. So that was one of the biggest reasons why we picked it, because we were going to build CodeSignal's initial version, and that was involving a lot of gamification when people were challenging each other live. It was almost like a game, and that meant a lot of real-time interactions. You should see your opponent's score, and everything should update live. So that was the main reason.
And CodeSignal was a very influential platform because there were a number of gamification for skill development and also interviewing platforms that came after it.
Yeah. So that's how it evolved. When we built the initial version, that was kind of more fun, interactive, gamified version where people would earn badges and challenge each other. We've realized that that's not really working in itself as a business model because we had to make money. And the very initial idea after that was, how can we get information about developer skills based on what they do on the platform? Because they already spent a lot of time solving these tasks, and we knew how difficult each task is and how fast they solve it. So we started keeping track of their coding scores. We modeled that after the credit score. And we started working with companies to send them candidates and see if they are good enough for them to hire. So that turned into our first business model with CodeSignal, which was almost an agency marketplace.
So you and your team scaled CodeSignal to millions of users and enterprise customers like Zoom and Netflix. Why did you stick with MongoDB, and what were the problems that it helped you solve along the way?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I guess one of the interesting things is that you typically don't just change your database unless you have real issues with it. But also, the reason why we haven't even introduced other databases along the way for our new services is because we had such a good experience with MongoDB, and it was really easy and fast for us to build and iterate, especially as a startup. So the more we used MongoDB, the more we wanted to use it for our other services and products. And for a very long time, like all the way until the end, CodeSignal was purely running on MongoDB on production without any other secondary databases.
Wow, that's amazing. What were like your top 3 favorite features or uses of MongoDB during that time?
So I would say my most favorite part of MongoDB is like very little maintenance on everything. So as a startup, you're going to move pretty fast. You're going to make a lot of changes. And with a traditional relational database with a rigid schema, you have to think about every change you make, run schema migrations, that saved us a lot of time because we didn't have to do that with MongoDB. The other part was JSON, especially if you're in the JavaScript ecosystem. And I mean, you have to interact with JSON to some extent because everyone almost knows JavaScript these days if you do some front end at least, and that just feels very natural working with JSON.
Awesome. So eventually you transitioned to your new company, Modelence. Why? Can you tell us why did you decide to start a new company?
Yeah, that was an interesting part of it, and I've founded and scaled CodeSignal for about 10 years, and that was a long time. So as the CTO, my main job was to make sure the platform scales and runs and is reliable. So towards the later years, it became even more important to focus on the reliability and observability to the point where it was more important than just building new features. But along the way, there were some certain things where we realized there's some standard building blocks when you build full stack applications, and especially with this particular stack that we're using, full stack JavaScript and MongoDB. And we started seeing patterns that we felt like it shouldn't have been us who solved it, but there should have been a platform and a framework that does it for us. And when we used Meteor back in the days, I think it solved maybe 20 to 30% of those things. But we saw a much higher potential on what a framework could do. Even standard things like authentication, just like how you work with your database, cron jobs, monitoring. We've spent too much time on doing these things at CodeSignal. And we've realized that almost none of those things were product specific, and it didn't have anything to do with skill assessments that we were doing. So that was the main reason why we started thinking of building Modelence, which was supposed to solve this, but not just for us, but for any other startup doing the same and going through those same steps.
Nice. And maybe you could describe a little bit more about, like what is Modelence? What do you guys offer?
So Modelence is a TypeScript cloud for production apps, and it sounds kind of broad when I describe it this way, but essentially we're simplifying how you build full stack applications. We've started by building an open source framework, which is somewhat inspired by us having used Meteor back in the days. And we also took all of those things that we had to do along the way, starting from authentication, managing configurations, cron jobs, and all of the standard building blocks that you eventually have to deal with whenever you're building applications. And we've created this whole specification of what are those things that are not product specific, that's more of a platform and infrastructure. And we didn't really see any solution that really goes so deep into the application logic that does those, because the other platforms that we've looked at, like Heroku or Vercel, they are kind of more on the infrastructure side, where they seem to be designed for more general use cases, where it's more like a black box of what you're actually running. And we wanted to have a more opinionated version of that kind of abstracts it away up to the point where you can only think of your business and product logic, and you don't have to implement anything beyond that.
So in previous conversations, you've mentioned that Modelence is building a Supabase alternative for MongoDB. What gap did you see in the ecosystem that made it a necessary thing?
Yeah, so one of the things that prompted us to think about Modelence this way was there is a tweet from Andrei Karpathy, and this was a pretty viral tweet, and as most of his tweets are. But
yes,
this one specific thing that he was talking about was he was complaining how difficult it was for him to create a full stack app with Vercel, Supabase, and these other platforms, because he still had to stitch a lot of things together.
Yeah,
and I really liked his analogy of saying it's like building web applications now in 2025 is like assembling IKEA furniture, where you have these different parts, you have the tools, but it's still up to you to put it together. And that was the main gap. So whenever we were thinking of what's the pain point we're solving, it wasn't really to provide yet another tool, but we wanted to solve this end-to-end where you don't really have to get something and then integrate it with what you have, but basically just get something that works out of the box with batteries included. And I think I really liked the idea of how Supabase works, because the idea of Modelence started back in 2019, and I was taking notes of all of those things that were challenging for us to do. I don't know if Supabase existed yet back then or not, but I guess it wasn't anywhere public yet. At that time, our idea was almost like building Supabase. Like that was one of the ideas. And we didn't really do anything about it because I was still at CodeSignal and this was just a side idea. When I saw Supabase, I kind of had this moment when I was like, wait, this is exactly what I would want to build. But then as I was diving deeper, I realized that it's purely Postgres based. And I was like, oh man, I would want to have the MongoDB version of this also. So I think that was kind of the whole story of positioning Modelence as a Supabase alternative for MongoDB. Our vision is slightly different. So even though we like mentioning Modelence as a Supabase alternative, it's more of an end-to-end solution. We kind of, and this is very ambitious sounding, especially at this stage, but we think of Modelence as like you take platforms like Vercel, Supabase, and any stitching layers in between, and turn that into one single platform where you don't have to orchestrate anything and it just works end to end. So front end, back end, database, API layers, everything, infrastructure. And we've realized that a lot of the times the difficulty is that integration between layers. So even though it doesn't make much sense to start out by just building the whole end-to-end thing because that's too ambitious, we still firmly believe that end-to-end integration is the real value for developers, where it's not just the framework, it's not just the infrastructure, but if you provide how the two of them work together, that's really what's going to make their life easier.
Yeah, I love that because I think what you're really getting at is how do you codify principles for building a good platform for app builders?
Yeah, exactly. And this has been one of the main points in how we're bringing Modelance. Now, again, the idea has been coming from multiple years ago, and LLMs and app builders weren't really a thing back then. But when we started Modelance, we asked ourselves, like, are we just going to build the same thing that we wanted to like 5-6 years ago? Or is this going to be a little different, or are we going to incorporate new ideas into this? I was resistant to AI for a while because I was like, we don't want to just build AI features or just build something for AI just because we're in an AI era. And maybe that's actually a good thing because we'll be a little different. We just won't just go with the flow. But after a while, what we've realized is, again, we're not doing this in the most streamlined, like mainstream kind of sense where we just build yet another AI integration.
Yeah.
And the thing that made the most sense for us was not just build another AI app builder, but build a platform for AI app builders. We've realized that we already wanted Modelence to be two things, opinionated and concise. And surprisingly, that just turns out to be the same two things that AI app builders really need. Because when your framework is very concise and you don't have to write a lot of code, you don't have to write a lot of boilerplate, that means you use less LLM tokens to generate. So that's faster, that's cheaper. And when it's opinionated, you're actually not overloading the LLM and the coding agent to make all of those right decisions for you because you already have a standard on how this should be done. And there is only one way to add authentication. There is only one way to define a cron job. So it turns into just translation, which is perfect for LLMs.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say so far have been the most compelling features of Modelance that MongoDB helps powers?
So live data is my personal favorite when it comes to MongoDB specifically, because we utilize change streams under the hood. And the other more kind of the modern thing these days is going to be vector search and auto embeddings, which is kind of at the cutting edge of the technology with Voyage AI. That's something we're also building an SDK on top to make it super easy, because almost every startup we see these days are building agentic apps, and they use vector search and embeddings. And we realized that if we're providing an application backend layer to them as a solution, it should most likely have those things abstracted away for them. So MongoDB already abstracts away a lot of that at the database level, but since we're doing the application layer, we want to take that to the next level and abstract away the application side of that too.
Awesome. And as someone who's had just like such a deep relationship with using MongoDB as one of their main technology components, how do we make MongoDB the backend for app developers?
I think the main feature of MongoDB, which is not being in a fixed structure, is like letting you be flexible on how you store your data, is already making MongoDB perfect for AI app builders, because you don't have to worry about the schema, and it's less likely to break when you let a coding agent make changes. But I think there are other features too, and again, the JSON structure that's letting you store any kind of data. I think especially recently, MongoDB has been coming up in different dimensions because of AI. Because AI, I think, makes MongoDB especially good at these things.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious, are there kind of additional MongoDB features that either power AI applications or that are AI based that you're kind of excited to try out?
Yeah. I mean, it's the more obvious ones are, again, vector search and auto embeddings. But I actually think that the more valuable ones are still kind of what's at the core of MongoDB, the document model itself, and not having to worry about types and being able to just iterate on the database as it is. Which, I mean, that's been there from the very initial days of MongoDB, but I think that's at least as valuable for AI as the other new modern features.
Awesome. Very cool. Um, so Modelance is a summer YC25 startup. Can you talk more about your journey with YC and how's that impacted your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah. I mean, YC is a kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I definitely recommend to pretty much anyone who considers it. I think, first of all, I would say a lot of the impact from YC is almost psychological, because you get into this network of other entrepreneurs. You get to see, like, you're in a batch, right? And statistically, at least some companies from this batch are going to be unicorns, and like some are going to be maybe $10 billion companies.
Yeah.
That's almost guaranteed. And they are right there with you, and they just all look like normal people. They are also scared and unsure what they are going to do. A lot of them pivot, a lot of them struggle to fundraise. And I think I don't think there is a better way to convince you that you can make it and be successful, other than putting you in the same bucket with a lot of other potentially successful people who are not successful yet, or not as successful yet, and basically prove that you're just like them. And there is not, I mean, those are all just normal people. They're like, you don't see anything crazy, and that makes you believe that you can also do it. I think that's one of the biggest psychological impacts that YC has. The other thing is, I think the whole simplicity of the advice that YC has, it always comes down to very basic things. Well, and which is like the main thing that YC always tells you is build something people want. And there's no complex advice of, you should do A, B, and C in the structured way, but it's always very basic and very reasonable. It's almost kind of repeating the same few basic things many times rather than giving you tons of advice that you're going to forget. And ultimately, it's also the push. I think creating this very high-speed environment, even though it's just 2-3 months for the batch, it made us do a lot of things that we were kind of still, it was outside of our comfort zone, and it pushed us really hard to do launches, to create a demo video and launch our product, and fundraise before the timeline we're planning to fundraise. And I think those are all things that kind of make your company successful, because it is literally an accelerator in the most literal sense of the word.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I used to work with a founder, and he said something that to me that I still think about all the time, which is that startups are the place where you need to lead with your strengths, not always work on your weaknesses. And it seems like the bigger the challenge, especially in AI that you're tackling, the more consistency you need in some area, more stability, whether it's community or your tech stack.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's also one of the things that I really valued at being in YC, where you really see you see the vulnerability of the other founders, where they are just struggling with things, and everyone has some kind of challenges.
Yeah.
And you see that, they're all struggling in the same way, and it's not that if you're struggling, then you're not successful already.
Yeah, absolutely. So you recently just joined the MongoDB Start program, but you've also been a part of the MongoDB family for many years. How's that partnership helped support Modelance's growth, both technical and business?
Yeah. I mean, I think on the overall kind of the high level side of this, I really like that MongoDB is putting so much focus on startups, especially now, kind of and emphasizing it, because throughout the years that we used MongoDB, I don't think there was so much specific focus on startups. And being in that ecosystem means that it's not just a piece of a tech stack for us, but it's also kind of the knowledge, like knowing that MongoDB really values startups use cases, because startups are also our own customers. We also focus on selling to startups at Modelance, and this made it basically perfect for us to be in the ecosystem, and also gave us confidence that MongoDB is moving in the direction of supporting startups more, and that we could rely on MongoDB, knowing that we're going to be supported, and this is going to make use cases much better for startups as well.
So how do you see Modelance evolving as developers build more AI native and context-aware applications?
So I think ultimately we're always gonna mirror where the demand is today in building web applications. And today, when we look at what most companies are building, it's agentic apps and anything around AI integrations. We want to make it really easy for them to do this, even though we started with the very basics, with things like authentication, monitoring, and database and front jobs. We realized that there is this whole new dimension and this new domain of AI integrations and vector search, which is something we're already incorporating. But I think that part is something we're going to always closely mirror to where the current usage is. And as developers build more agentic applications, I think there are certain tools they will need. One thing specifically that I'm expecting is, as we keep building more and more agentic apps, the observability for those will become even more important. And there are some tools already that solve this, but it's one thing to have a separate tool. It's one thing to have that baked into your framework and the platform. And this is something relatively new that we've added to Modelence, but I think we'll continue evolving this. So when you build agentic applications with Modelence, you get full visibility into your prompts, into your agent's traces, into your agent steps. I think those are all things that people have to use separate tools now. And I see this becoming more and more native to Modelence as we go.
Awesome, very cool. And any words for your fellow founders out there that are building and trying to figure out how to build their next YC startup?
So yeah, I would say anyone who's building a new startup, for me, and I know this might be a little subjective, but I'm still gonna say that ultimately I think you have to pick what you're the most passionate about, something that you could stick with for a very long time. I wouldn't really look into, the current market and like where the businesses have the most challenges, or kind of thinking about this very logically or analytically. Because at the end of the day, if you're just thinking of a problem to solve, the problems are going to be the same for everyone. And you have to think about your competition and why you're the right person to do this. And I think the founder market fit is, at least for me, that's much more important than the product and the challenge that you're solving. Because if you have some unique expertise or you have some unique passion on this specific problem that you're going to solve, as long as you're passionate about something, I think you would just eventually pivot into something that works, rather than picking an idea that works but then losing your interest over time, which is actually a much more common reason why startups fail than people just being passionate about something, but it's still not working. I think typically people just lose their passion, and that's why startups fail. So I would make that the number one condition of choosing what you do.
So what are you looking forward to for Modelance?
So one of the most exciting things that's coming soon is we're launching our own AI app builder soon. And I wanna say right away that we're not trying to just add one more AI app builder to the already crowded ecosystem. The reason why we're doing this is because we've already built a framework and a platform that we think is great for app builders. And our own app builder is more like a way for us to demonstrate our platform rather than competing with other app builders. Also, this is part of that whole end-to-end vision, in that we've created a platform, but it's much easier for us to also create the other part, to create the tool that works with the platform, rather than try to make it work with other tools that are not built for the platform. And we think like having a tool and a platform both built for each other would be the best experience.
Awesome. Very cool. So Modelance is built around full stack TypeScript. How does MongoDB complement that ecosystem from a developer experience perspective?
Yeah, so if I were to pick one tech stack or backend to complement MongoDB, the best, I think that would be TypeScript, because how natively it works with JSON. And I think especially TypeScript over JavaScript now it brings something special to MongoDB because it adds types. And this is something we're doing as part of Modelence also, because MongoDB is naturally flexible and less structured. And we're using TypeScript's ability to add guardrails around your types on the application layer to still give you the flexibility on the database layer, but also make it less likely for you to do something wrong in your application layer. So like that two combined, I think it's just such a good combination, because TypeScript gives you the same flexibility. It gives you the guardrails also. And when you work with TypeScript and MongoDB together, it almost feels like it's just one piece. It doesn't feel like you're using two separate tools. It's as if they are just built for each other.
So during your YC demo, you had mentioned MongoDB as one of the 4 pillars to your success. What would be your recommendation to other startups that are, for example, thinking about how to approach their YC demo day or how to build their startup through the program?
I would say if you're a startup and you use MongoDB, you can definitely get a lot of help from MongoDB in this angle. And for us specifically, it helped us a lot because aside from just using MongoDB, we're also integrating and partnering with MongoDB to the point when MongoDB is also helping us with go-to-market efforts. And it's turning into something much more than just a tech stack for us.
Thank you so much, Aram, for joining us and sharing your exciting stories and experiences. For all of you who are interested in doing your own startup, please check out our MongoDB for Startups program.
Thank you.